What is going on, y'all? This is Pay Me in Dividends, and today is March 17th, 2025. There are no changes to the portfolio today. And just to clarify, somebody actually asked in the previous video that I put out yesterday, what do I plan on doing with my dividends and my reinvesting? So just for clarification, I am reinvesting QQQI and XDTE. I have both of these on drip. Now Misty, I am not reinvesting into, but I also don't plan on selling these 1,000 shares either. So I'm going to use these Misty dividends to feed XDTE and QQQI, and I will also keep those on drip. And also at the end of the month, as I try to do every month, is I'll give you guys a wrap up and show you guys exactly how much dividend income I received. My income is going to decrease naturally this month compared to January and February because of the changes that I've made to my portfolio. But moving forward, you guys should be able to see the progression moving forward into the future. So let's take a look at the market. The S&P is green today. It's about even. It's up about 0.5%. So that is a good sign. Now, today's video is basically going to be a part 2 to yesterday's video, but these are more Nasdaq focused income ETFs. You will notice here on the bottom is a Wildcard, and we'll get to this at the end of the video, but basically this one is invested into multiple things, kind of a total market ETF, but we'll talk about this last. So the first one I want to look at is QYLD. Now QYLD, again, just like the previous video, is from Global X. This is QYLD. I spoke about XYLD in the previous video, but I think it's worth mentioning because this fund, again, is pretty much one of the OGs of covered call ETFs, income ETFs, right? Now, you'll notice with QYLD, it has eroded over time, right? If you look at its counterpart, XYLD, you can see that the inception price back in 2013 was about $40 a share, and today it's still around $39-$40 a share, so not much erosion there, right? But if you look at QYLD, the inception price looks like it was around $25 a share, and today it is at $16-$17 a share. So there is some erosion there in the share price, but nonetheless they have been very, very consistent, paying about 10 to 12% dividend yield that is paid out on a monthly basis. And again, guys, these funds have been around for over 10 years, so I think this is an indication or just an example of how these funds can perform with 10 plus years of history behind them. All right, so I think they're good to look at just to kind of get a snapshot of history. Of course, it's no indication of what's going to happen in the future, but history does tend to repeat itself. So I think it is kind of good to get this insight just so you can kind of apply it to other things or other ETFs in the market as well. So this is QYLD. Again, just like XYLD, except this one is based off of the Nasdaq, so not much to talk about here. Again, not a very exciting ETF, but it does pay about 11-12%, and it is paid out on a monthly basis. And you can see the inception date here is 2013, so it's been out for a while, and it's been doing its thing. It's been paying out. So we'll move on to the next one, which is probably my favorite one, and the reason I decided to make it majority of my portfolio, and this is QQQI from Neos, right? They also have SPY and IWMI, but QQQI pays about 14% dividend yield. And again, guys, just like the previous video, I talked about the distributions and how consistent they are. This is really what I'm looking for, right? Moving forward is something that is very, very consistent, very predictable, because you got to look at it this way, right? If you plan on withdrawing these funds at some point and you have a set budget, it's a lot easier to budget your monthly expenses based off of an ETF that pays a very, very predictable payment. There's not much of a variance here, and there's also some capital appreciation, right? So you can also see here an example of the growth of 10,000 at NAV inception. right? And this is, basically compared to the Nasdaq index, and you can see that it follows it very, very closely, right? While paying that 14% yield. And if we go over here, we can see that since inception, it has returned on average an annual return of 12%. Now again, keep in mind that this is total return, meaning that it does account for the dividends. However, this is without reinvesting the dividends, which I want to make that distinction again, because these are funds that you could possibly withdraw from and actually use the dividends and put them to use to expenses, monthly expenses, whatever the case is, without having to sell any shares, but without having to necessarily reinvest all of the dividends to get this return, right? So just keep that in mind. So the next one we're going to look at is QDTE. Now QDTE, it does have some erosion in the share price, but I want you guys to check this out, right? So this is a chart compared to QQQ, right, the Nasdaq, and you can see that it actually has slightly outperformed the Nasdaq, right? So let me make sure, because this has 4. All right, yeah, this is the Nasdaq. So you can basically see here that it has slightly outperformed QQQ, right? Not by much, but it has slightly outperformed even without the dividends reinvested. Again, the only thing to keep in mind is look at the share price, right? The share price at inception was about $46 a share, and today it is around, or as of March 7th, according to this chart, it is around $35 a share. So there is some erosion in that share price, but if you account for total return, which is the dividends included, it's actually kept up with the market. So this is one that I'm not invested in. I am invested in XDTE. The share price has remained a bit more stable than QDTE, but again, if you're just looking at total return, which is the dividends included, it's actually kept up with the market. So we can see here the average total return, annual total return, is about 9.5%. All right, now the next one we're going to look at is JEPQ from Goldman Sachs. Now JEPQ, I really like JEPQ. Look at this chart, y'all. So you can see since October of 2023 till today, it's actually up about 17% just in share price, right? Now this is also paying about a 10% dividend yield, and I really like JEPQ. We spoke about GPIX, which was the S&P version of this ETF, in the previous video, but this one I like a little more just because the dividend yield is slightly higher. All right, so I think this is probably my favorite on the list. And if you look at the total return, right, or the average annual total return, we can see that it returns about 23%, since inception, annualized, right? Meaning this is the total return that you would get on an annual basis since this fund has been out, right? So I really think this is probably one of the most solid ETFs, especially if you plan on withdrawing your dividends. And again, not much variance here on the payments, right? So you can see that these payments are very close. It does not there's not any wild swings, and you'll also notice that it actually grows over time, which is really good, right? Especially if you plan on withdrawing these dividends. You want your income to continue growing in your portfolio, right? So you can see the top 10 holdings here. Again, big companies that we all know: Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon. These are all big companies. So I think this is probably one of the better dividend ETFs, and it is kind of a direct competitor with JeptQ, right? So we have JeptQ here. If we max out the chart, JeptQ has been out a little longer, since May of 2022, and we can see all time it is up almost 7%, right? So we can go to their website here, and before we look at that, let's just look at the annual return, right? So 10%, so a lot lower than JEPQ. And this is why I think I like JEPQ more, because JEPQ actually pays about a similar dividend yield, but there is a bit more capital appreciation there, right? But I think JepQ is worth talking about as well, and it could be it could find a place in your portfolio. You can't really go wrong with these big institutions, right? JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. There's a lot of trust there. I know some people may be hesitant with these newer ETF managers like Neos or Roundhill, right? But when you're dealing with these big institutions, it may give you a bit more peace of mind and give you that really, really good performance, right? So as of today, JepQ is paying about 11% dividend yield. And again, it is based off of the Nasdaq. The holdings are very, very similar to GPIQ. And you can see, again, the total annual return is about 10% a year. So it's hanging on there with the market, with the S&P, right? So about 10% average annual return, which is good, right? So now the only thing about JepQ, and it is my same gripe with JEPI, is the payments tend to be scattered, right? There's kind of a variance here. We can see back in July of 2024, it was 42 cents. Here it's 55 cents. Here it's 50, 48, 45. I mean, I guess there's not a huge variance there, but it's enough of a variance for me to go with GPIQ over it, right? So that is just my 2 cents on it. This is not financial advice, but I think you can't really go wrong with either one of these, honestly. These are two big dogs in the industry, and I think you'll make out pretty good in the future investing in either one of these. All right, now the next one we're going to look at is QQA. All right, so QQQA is from Invesco, right? And if we max out the chart, we can see it is red, but the share price has remained pretty stable, right? So if we go here, we can go to the website and let's get this thing loaded, and we can see that this is from Invesco, right? So QQQ Income Advantage ETF. Now let's look at what is in their portfolio. So again, a lot of these funds are very, very similar, right? These are big companies: Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, right? These are all companies that we know of, and this one actually pays an 11% yield, right? Now what I do like about this one is, although it is a newer fund, look how close these payments are, right? Again, this is one of those ETFs where you can withdraw the income and really kind of predict what you're going to make that month, right? So this may be one to take a look at. I've actually not seen much information on this. I don't see many videos on YouTube about this one. So you guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about QQA from Invesco, right? And if we look at the average annual return, it is around 10%. So it is competing with JepQ as of now, right? So the next one we're going to look at is QDTY. Now, of course, yield max, they're always in the game, right? So QDTY is very, very similar to the one we looked at yesterday, which was SDTY, which was based off the S&P 500. This one is based off of the Nasdaq. Again, a very, very new fund. And the unique thing about these yield max ETFs is these actually pay on a weekly basis. Now, this fund is very, very new, and you can see that these payments are kind of wild. I mean, it went from 32 cents to 15 cents to 24 cents. So, I think there's going to be a big swing in those payments, similar to QDTE, but they will be direct competitors, right? They are both 0 DTE ETFs, and they both pay on a weekly basis. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how these hold up or how they compare to one another. And I'm going to keep an eye on these. I'm not going to put money in either of these, QDTE or QDTY, but it will be interesting to see towards the end of 2025 which one has actually performed better. You guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about QDTY from YieldMax? And the last one I want to take a look at is GIAX, right? So I labeled this as a wild card because they're not necessarily invested into the Nasdaq, but they're actually pretty unique. All right, let's look at their holdings. So they have VU, Vanguard, S&P 500. They also have VGT, which is a Vanguard Information Technology ETF. They have Mid Cap Growth, Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF, right? So they have, their top 4 holdings are 4 different Vanguard holdings. You can also see they have some Nvidia down here. They have some Tesla down here. So this one is actually pretty interesting. Again, this is a newer fund, so we don't really have much data on it. So you'll see here I don't have any data on it. I've got to give this one a little time to kind of see how it performs moving forward, right? This is almost a competitor to SPY-T as far as the share price, but this one actually pays a slightly higher dividend yield. This one is about 24%. Yep, 24% dividend yield, and it does pay on a monthly basis. And what I do like about this one is the payments, again, are very, very predictable. There's not much of a variance. And yeah, this may be one that you could put on your watch list and kind of see how it performs moving forward. The only thing I noticed from a first glimpse is that the payments have actually been decreasing over time, right? So you can see their first payment is 40 cents, 39, 38, 38, with their most recent payment being 37 cents a share. And the assets under management isn't too high. It's around $50 million. Most of these other ones have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in them. JepQ, I believe, has over $1 billion or close to it. So this one is still very, very small. I don't know how it'll look moving forward. It is on my watch list, but it may be something that has some longevity to it. I really, really like the holdings on it. So I really want to like this ETF, but I need to keep an eye on it and see how it performs during different, seasons of the market. So you guys let me know, what do you think about GIX? This is from X Funds by Nicholas Wealth. You guys let me know. And yeah, that is the wrap up for this video. So you guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about these Nasdaq based dividend income ETFs? And as always, I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.